Because maybe we can talk about that a little bit. We'll do like a whole 1 hour thing about Na'Vi, but let's talk a bit about Na'Vi. One thing I do think is insane is this, right? I don't know if you remember back in the day, Legia, but when s1mple used to be on like the bad teams, or even when it was Team Liquid or whatever, and he didn't have that many good players around him, people used to always say about him and Nico on Mouse Spots, like, oh, but the reason they frag out is because they're on a bad team, so it's easier to frag out on a bad team. Now, I've never agreed with that. I actually think the opposite, dude. But I would just say this. Anyone who thinks that now you don't even have any argument. You have to literally just bow to s1mple, because you have to acknowledge he's on the best team with the most firepower, and he still puts up the best stats possible. Like, if that was their logic back then, what does that even mean now? Because I think he's gotten to an even more ridiculous... Dude, he's almost like that meme now. You know that famous meme on Reddit where people go like, what is it about Olaf Meister? You know, you check the scoreboard and he has 30 kills, but he looked like he never got a kill, but a Guardian flick. I remember the guy, you know, that famous copy pasta everyone does?
Yes.
Dude, that's actually how good s1mple is now. Sometimes you look and you're like, this isn't the craziest game I've ever seen. And then when they put the scoreboard up, he has like 29 kills and you're like, what the fuck? When did he get all those? Like, just his everyday game is just impossible now, dude. Like, what do you think, Legia? Because I already thought he was the GOAT even before he won this, mate. But I think it's like it just never stops with this guy.
Hands down, the best player Counter-Strike has ever seen since 1999. I don't think there is any player like, regardless, Forrest, Get Right, Neo in their primes. I don't think anyone was ever so good. People achieved more, people won more tournaments, yes. But that also speaks, for example, for Forrest, he had Get Right behind his team.
For sure.
With him and many other very good players. And he carried Na'Vi basically for such a long time and always made them a contender, kept them as a contender, until he got his final pieces in the end together. And I think that a huge part of that takes credit has to be given to Blade.
Sure.
I think that he's the perfect person to form such a team. His personality, he has achieved so many things in Counter-Strike before, and I know that s1mple respects him. And if you have s1mple respect him, you know that everyone else will also. So it's also good for them having Blade, but undoubtedly the best player in the world by far. And also you saw it back then already when he played for Flipside, Liquid, Hellraisers. What you said, he's been carrying already back then. He's been bringing these teams to top 8, Liquid to top 4 in the final even of Cologne. Yeah. I think it was the final.
Yep.
And it was him, and you could see already there his potential. He just needed the proper team to win tournaments. He's always been a good player, but to win tournaments, you also need 3-4 other people who can actually deliver and help you become even better. And like you said, it's bullshit that if you have worse players in your team that you're going to perform better. If I have good players in my team, I'm going to automatically play even better. So I think that's what he was just missing. The team that he wanted to, that he feels happy with, not something that is just mixed up together and brought in. He wants his team. I know that. I spoke a lot with him also when they were in Berlin boot camping. We met and we went to dinner, eat something with Electronic, talked a little bit, and I feel he's happy. And you can see it also in his attitude. He praises his teammates. After the major, he said, "This win goes to my teammates." He never speaks about himself anymore. Always praises his teammates, and for a reason, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I guess on s1mple, I genuinely believe that major final might be the best performance ever by an individual in the series, considering the weight of the moment, considering what he was going for, and the fact that it's kind of, if major finals in the past, he didn't have the team around him to do it, and they fell at the last hurdle, and in all of those games, they were never really in it in the previous major finals. To come into this one and just absolutely bang them. First map insane, second map held them in it. No way they get to overtime without him. So I thought it was pretty insane. And actually, I've watched a few esports over the years, and maybe Fake is the one that stands out as the parallel. But actually, for you, Duncan, do you actually think that s1mple is the best kind of esports player ever? Is there anyone that really has played at this level before, in your opinion?
The reason I would say
esports general, sorry.
He means all esports. The reason I would say s1mple is number one in all esports is, I mean, we're talking obviously not just about resume. Like, if people are going off greatest ever, like Legia says, Device has a better resume in CSGO. You don't need to go beyond that. But obviously, we're talking about like combining the eye test of like, you know, how good the guy actually is when you watch him at the game. First of all, I think s1mple has probably the best eye test. Like, you'd have to compare him to people from games like Quake with the skill skill expression. It's just crazy. And even then, right, the only people who basically compare are like the Quake champions, and they have basically an unfair advantage, which is it's a 1v1 game. So if you really are the best, you can win every time. Well, we've all seen from Simple's career, sometimes he was the best, he didn't win most of the time. And then the other angle is this: Quake is just a much, much smaller game in terms of competitor base. Like, there's way less people trying to compete. True, they're all amazing at it, but in fact, that's part of why you don't get new people. But it's a way less, like, basically you're trying to beat the same 10, 15 people over a 20-year span. In a game like Counter-Strike, there are millions of people trying to play the game. Like, so I would say it's more comparable to like people like Faker. And the difference is this, right? Someone like Faker has like a couple of years where he was the best in League of Legends, and then he has the resume as well. But he was never really like the best player in the world for like 5 years straight or something. Like, I don't care who HLTV gave the award to at the end of those years. You could make a literal case that s1mple was the best player in CSGO for like about 6 years in a row or something mental. Like, that's the craziest part. He's not only got the peak, the longevity is impossible. Like, the reason I'm saying impossible, by the way, is I don't think anyone in esports did it except s1mple. Like, mate, I think Nico, in a world where s1mple didn't exist, Nico and Zyrathenia would be like the aliens that came to Earth. Like, wow, how are they so good? Like, it's impossible. He makes Nico just look human sometimes. That's how insane s1mple is, you know. Like, I genuinely think he will be like kind of people like Faker, etc. He'll be considered like one of the great outliers at the end of his career. Like, no one will be this good in any game. You can't be, basically. So the idea you're this good in a team game, I also think it's almost impossible. Because I even used to tell, I'll give you a little bit of juice. When I would sort of like, if I had friends who were pros, especially in CS, I would sometimes sort of talk to them, like, you know, between games, if they were like asking my opinion about something. So I've even told people like Get Right and Neo, I've told them, dude, you play a team game. In team games, you can't actually guarantee you're going to be the best player, even if you're skill-wise the best player. So, you know, some games you got to adapt, you got to do something different if your shots aren't hitting. Like, the joke is with s1mple, it's like, actually, that's wrong, mate. You can just be the best every single time, so just do your shit normal. Like, I'd have to tell him that, wouldn't I? Like, the coaching advice is terrible, isn't it? But it's true.
Inhuman, I don't know. It's just, when you play against him also in practice, it's not like that he's just jumping around. He actually plays serious, and he's just not missing.
Yes.
He's just not missing. I'm sorry, and I've genuinely never ever in my life experienced someone playing this good. He's just fucking toxic good. It's just disgusting, and I don't think anyone ever, also not in the future, will become who s1mple was. And I think he will be forever the best player in the world in Counter-Strike, 100%. It's just inhuman for me to be this consistently good. He doesn't have bad series. He just doesn't have bad series. It's like almost like when Coldzera started at the beginning, and I watched also his LAN statistics back then. I don't know, like 25 or 30 LANs in a row where he had like 1.1 and above
for sure.
rating, which was for me ridiculous.
Yes.
And then I compared with s1mple, and he's even much better. So I'm like, what the hell? How good is this guy?
Yes.
So he just not normal.
And you know that famous cliche where people say, like, you know, like, hard work beats talent, but people often forget the second part, which is if talent refuses to work hard is the rest of the sentence, right? s1mple is the ultimate example of why you try to tell every kid, no matter how skilled they are, you still have to do all the work and prepare and mentally. Because if you do, by the way, that's why he's just unbeatable, because he already had, like, arguably the most skill, and then on top of it, he actually has. I agree with you. He's just, like, the worst thing, by the way, for s1mple's rival that ever happened was actually that Blade hooked up with him in this team. Because if people don't know, Blade really is like a professor. Like, what, you know, all those fans who say the same thing we all did, like, wow, Blade's style is outdated. You wouldn't beat Blade in an argument. I guarantee you this right now. Like, if you tried to argue with Blade about why his style was wrong a few years ago and you were right, you would lose the argument, because he's actually so smart. He has brilliant reasons for everything he does, right? But the thing is, Blade's style, this is why I think he ended up a bit outdated, is he was trying to just go for the perfect style. Like, he was talking as though he had the Astralis players and he could do anything he wanted in the game, which I do think is a bit of, like, it's almost like there's a saying we have in English, like, the perfect is the enemy of the good. It's like, if you try too much for perfection, you'll actually mess up like a bunch of things you could have done just good enough and win the game, right? But the good thing is this: I actually think what happened is, I've talked to both of them, I think actually s1mple like fucks with Blade's mentality. Like, he loves that, like, the fact that he believes like there's perfection possible in the game and you can always do something better, and there's like a higher macro way to play the game. And I think actually of all the players, I would say s1mple seems like the one who's taken that the most on board. And if you talk to him, dude, he seems to be totally in line with Blade's philosophy on the game. So I actually think the two of them together, it's why I often make comments which people probably think are a bit harsh, where it's like, I don't really think Boomich is like a true IGL in the way that like Glaive is or Carrigan is. I think s1mple basically calls scales wherever the fuck he wants for himself, and a little bit of the mid round if he's alive still. And I think Boomich just does the basic, the opener to the round, or like the other thing is, you remember those pictures from the major? They all had all those printouts of this. I'm assuming strats or the scouting report for the opponent. There's another thing. If you have fucking Carrigan, he's not handing out notes before the game. It's all in his head. Like, you just worry about what I'm going to call, mate. I'll do the calls. Like, that, the way they were handing that out made it seem like it's more of like a team effort in Na'Vi. I don't think Boomich is really sat there like the mastermind doing it all. So I think, yeah, I totally agree, mate. You already had the best player. And this is why, if you're one of his rivals, you shit out a look right now if you want to win for the next few years. You took the best player who already had the best work ethic, and then he combined with someone who's basically like a genius at Counter-Strike and how tactics work. And he likes it. So it's game over for all of you. Like, Ziwu, you're just a little fat kid that's really good at shooting people. Nico, you're mega, but you have terrible taste in teammates. It's almost like me with, well, I could make a side joke there, but TOs will just say this. You just say TOs, make it funny. Flashpoint. Remember Flashpoint? Yeah. Anyway, you get the point. So, yeah, the rest of you, you're just good at Counter-Strike. s1mple just mastered the game. It's over for you. It's over for all of us. It's over for all of us. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.